Sign it, old man. Thursday you're out. Golden Oaks already has your room." Her words cracked through the kitchen like a slap across my face. The smell of burnt toast still lingered from the old toaster, mixing with lemon furniture polish she'd sprayed a few minutes before, trying to make the place smell like her new condo instead of my home. The refrigerator hummed, steady and indifferent, while my daughter stood in front of me with a stack of papers she had no right to hold. Melissa's heels clicked on the linoleum as she crossed to the trash can, carrying a plastic bag stuffed with my wife Maggie's photo albums. Without hesitation, she let it drop. The sound wasn't loud, just a dull thud, but it cut deeper than any shout. "You're not my dad anymore," she said coldly. "You're a liability. A burden." I stared at the black bag. I could almost see Maggie's smile through the plastic, the one from our first summer by the American River. Gone. Just like that. Melissa yanked the keys from my pocket before I could react, flipping them around her finger and sliding them onto her shiny new keychain. She smirked. "This house doesn't need two owners. Don't worry, I'll keep it safe." On the kitchen table, a folder lay open, pages marked with colored tabs: power of attorney, placement agreement, intake forms for Golden Oaks. Behind her, a man in a gray suit, the mobile notary, adjusted his tie and held his seal like a weapon. Beside him, a woman with a clipboard smiled too brightly, the intake coordinator ready to process me like I was a package at FedEx. My dog Rusty whined from the corner, shifting on his old blanket. He knew something was wrong. His eyes darted from Melissa to me, ears pinned back. I tried to breathe, but the air felt heavier than it ever had in the jungles of Vietnam. My own daughter was standing here, erasing me with paperwork. "Oh, sign it," Melissa pressed, sliding the pen toward me. "I'm still alive," I whispered. "That's debatable," she shot back, snapping her fingers for the notary. The seal clicked. A small sound, but it echoed in my head like a gunshot. Rusty barked once, sharp and angry. It startled the intake woman. She dropped her clipboard. For a second, the room froze. The smell of lemon polish, the hum of the fridge, the heavy silence pressing in. I clenched my fists on the edge of the table. She thought she'd buried me under signatures and seals. She thought she'd thrown Maggie away with the morning trash. But I'm still breathing, and I'll bury her lies with the same paper she used against me. So, if you want to see how a man they tried to erase turns it all back on them, hit that subscribe button right now, and drop your name and your city in the comments. I'll be there at the end, answering the ones who stayed through every blow. She buried me with paperwork. I'll answer with paperwork that digs deeper. The morning light slipped through the blinds in thin, dusty stripes, cutting across the kitchen table. My old coffee maker groaned louder than my back when I bent to pour the water. The smell of strong black coffee filled the room, sharp enough to wake me before the first sip touched my lips. I sat in the chair Maggie used to sit in, out of habit. It creaked, reminding me it was older than Melissa's new car. Rusty, my old mutt, shuffled in from the hallway, his nails clicking on the linoleum. He sat near my feet, waiting for the piece of toast I always dropped. This morning, though, the toaster spat out blackened slices, smoke curling up toward the ceiling. I waved it away with the back of my hand and muttered, "Figures." The radio on the counter crackled with traffic updates on I-80. Heavy delays near downtown Sacramento due to a stalled semi on the causeway. The announcer's voice faded as my phone buzzed against the table. A message from Melissa. "Dad, give me your insurance info. I'll put everything on autopay so you don't forget. Send me a photo of your card." I stared at the text. No good morning, no how are you feeling, just straight to business, like I was a bill that needed managing. I typed back slowly, my thumb stiff on the screen. "I don't need autopay. I've been paying these bills since before you were born." 3 dots appeared instantly. "Dad, come on. You know it's easier if I handle it. One photo. Don't make this hard." I didn't answer. I set the phone face down, took a sip of bitter coffee, and looked at Rusty. He tilted his head as if he knew what the silence meant. The kitchen smelled like burnt bread and lemon polish. Melissa had sprayed it yesterday when she stopped by. She said it covered the old smell, but to me, it covered the only smell left of Maggie, lavender soap and fresh laundry. I stood up, stretched my aching back, and walked into the living room. The photos of Maggie still lined the shelf above the TV, each frame a piece of my life. For a moment, the house felt steady. Mine. Then the phone buzzed again. "Dad, please don't ignore me. This is important." I put it back down without reading further. Important to her, not to me. The morning news on Channel 7 played in the background. A segment about Golden Oaks senior living flashed by. Smiling gray-haired actors, wide hallways, pastel curtains. My chest tightened. Melissa had mentioned the place before, too many times. Rusty barked once at the screen, startling me. I chuckled and scratched his ears. Don't worry, boy. They're not taking us there. But the words felt thinner than the paper the ads were printed on. The HOA meeting was held in the community room behind the strip mall on Folsom Boulevard. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright for a space that smelled like bleach and Costco cookies stacked on a folding table. Plastic chairs squeaked every time someone shifted. I sat near the back, hands folded over my cane. Rusty wasn't allowed inside, so he waited in the truck with the windows cracked. I could see his ears flicking in the fading light through the glass doors. Melissa walked in late, all perfume and perfect hair, carrying her phone like it was a badge of office. She didn't look at me, but she knew I was there. She always knew. The chairwoman droned on about landscaping fees and security cameras. When she mentioned the gate codes, Josh, the neighbor with the new Tesla, leaned back and smirked. Some people here keep their gate codes from the 80s. Makes the whole neighborhood unsafe. Laughter rippled. Heads turned. Not toward Josh, but toward me. Melissa chuckled too, louder than she needed to. Don't worry. We'll be updating that soon. My dad won't have to worry about gate codes where he's going. The room went quiet for a second. Then a couple of polite laughs, the kind people use when they don't want to get involved. My jaw tightened. I gripped my cane a little harder, but I didn't say a word. Instead, I looked at the chairwoman. She glanced away quickly, busying herself with her papers. Melissa's phone buzzed. She tapped speaker without hesitation. Her voice lifted just enough for the whole row to hear. Yes, Golden Oaks. Thursday works. Intake at 3. He'll be ready. Every head turned again. Heat rose up my neck, but I stayed still. In the reflection of the glass doors, I could see Rusty in the truck shifting restlessly, as if he could sense my blood boiling. The meeting moved on. Tree trimming, parking violations. But the taste in my mouth was bitter as burnt coffee. On my way out, Josh gave me a little nod, half smile, the kind that says, "Sorry, old man," without any words. I didn't answer. My truck door groaned when I opened it. Rusty leapt onto the seat, tail thumping like a heartbeat. "Let's go home, boy," I muttered. But home didn't feel like home anymore, not after they'd made me the punchline of the neighborhood. The garage smelled like oil and damp cardboard. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, buzzing as if it wanted to quit. I'd been out back fixing the fence when I heard voices. Laughter that didn't belong in my house. When I stepped inside, Melissa's friends were already there, dragging boxes across the concrete. Bright Sharpie letters on the sides read, "Wedding Decor." One of the guys had his sneakers up on Maggie's old armchair, the one with the faded floral pattern, the same chair she used to sit in when she read her evening novels. "Hey, careful with that," I said, sharper than I meant. The guy grinned, brushing at the dust like he was doing me a favor. "Relax, sir. This thing's from another century. We're just making space." Melissa appeared from behind a stack of boxes, phone in one hand, latte in the other. "Dad, don't start. The chair doesn't fit the new look. We need more room for storage anyway." I stared at the chair, the indent in the cushion still shaped like Maggie's body. It fit this house for 30 years. Melissa rolled her eyes, set her coffee on a box, and started rearranging things like she owned the place. "Dad, weddings need space. Memories don't. You've had long enough with that stuff." One of her friends chuckled, tugging a sheet off another box. "Guess the past has to move out sometime, huh?" The bulb flickered. My hands shook, not from age, but from rage. I bent, pulled Maggie's armchair back into the corner, the scrape of wood on concrete loud in the stale air. "This stays." Melissa's smile froze for half a second before she switched it back on. Too bright, too fake. "That's fine, but don't get upset when people trip over it." I noticed then the small fireproof box where I kept our insurance documents tucked under the workbench. The lid was cracked open, papers shifted, not the way I left them. Rusty whined at the doorway, ears flat. He hated raised voices. Melissa leaned down toward her friends, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "He doesn't even realize half this stuff will be gone by next month." My heart slammed against my ribs. They weren't just moving things. They were erasing Maggie piece by piece, and now they were digging through the things that kept me standing. I picked up the lid of the fireproof box, closed it hard, the metal clang echoing in the garage. Melissa glanced at me, then back to her friends, shrugging like I was the unreasonable one. The bulb buzzed louder, then went out. For a second, the garage was dark, and in that darkness, I knew the fight hadn't even started yet. The diner on El Camino smelled like burnt bacon and too much bleach. Vinyl booths stuck to the back of my legs when I slid in, and the ketchup bottle on the table left a red ring on the napkin. Channel 7 played on the corner TV, some anchor talking about housing prices and retirement plans I'd never afford. Rusty lay under the table, his tail thumping quietly whenever the waitress walked by with a tray. She set down my usual, black coffee, no sugar. I wrapped my hands around the mug, soaking in the heat. For a few minutes, it felt like peace. Then Melissa breezed in like she owned the place. Designer coat, phone pressed to her ear, talking too loud for such a small diner. She didn't sit across from me. She slid in beside me, crowding me into the corner. "Dad, sign the papers. It'll make everything easier." Her voice was flat and mechanical, like she was reading a script. "Easier for who?" I asked, not looking at her. "For everyone. For me, for you, for the future." The waitress raised an eyebrow as she poured more coffee, catching the tension, then scurried off. A couple at the next booth slowed their conversation, ears tilted our way. Melissa pulled a glossy pamphlet from her purse and laid it on the table, covering my plate. Golden Oaks Senior Living. Smiling gray-haired actors, sunlit rooms, flower arrangements. She tapped the bold letters with a manicured nail. "Thursday, 3 o'clock. Intake is confirmed." I stared at the pamphlet. Rusty growled softly under the table, low enough that only I could hear. My hand dropped to his head, steadying both of us. "You planned this without me. Dad, you don't plan anymore. You just exist. Let me do this for you." Her phone buzzed again. Without asking, she hit speaker. A cheery voice filled the booth. "Hi, Melissa. Just confirming Thursday at 3. Room 214 is ready for your father." The words landed heavier than any mortar I'd ever heard. The couple in the next booth exchanged a glance. The waitress froze mid-step, balancing her tray. My stomach twisted as if the whole diner had turned against me. Melissa smiled, sipping my coffee like it was hers. "See, everything's arranged. You just have to stop fighting." I pushed the pamphlet aside, the glossy paper sticking to my hand with a smear of ketchup. My voice came out low. "I'm not dead yet." She sighed, shaking her head like I was a stubborn child. "Not yet, but almost." The TV above us flickered, cutting to a Golden Oaks commercial. The same pastel curtains, the same fake smiles. Melissa looked up at it, then back at me. Her smile widened. Rusty barked once, sharp and loud. The whole diner turned. Melissa's smile faltered for just a second. I leaned closer, close enough for her to hear the rasp in my voice. "This isn't over." She rolled her eyes, but I saw the flicker, the crack in her confidence. Just for a moment. They came just after lunch. 3 sharp knocks, then the door swung open before I could answer. Melissa walked in like she owned the place, heels snapping on the hardwood. Behind her, a man in a gray suit with a leather case, and a woman clutching a clipboard. "Mr. Bennett?" The woman smiled too brightly. "Kara from Golden Oaks. Just a quick intake. Won't take long." The man clicked open his case. A metal seal gleamed. "Mobile notary," he said flatly. Melissa dropped a plastic cup of water on the table, just out of my reach. "Sit, Dad. Let's be efficient." Rusty padded in, tail low, ears back. He placed himself between us, eyes darting. The notary stacked forms on the table, each page marked with colored tabs. The smell of toner and lemon polish filled the room. Kara leaned closer. "Everyone resists at first. Totally normal." Melissa's voice was colder. "Room 214 is ready, Thursday at 3. I felt my jaw tighten. "I'm still alive." She laughed under her breath. "Debatable." The notary slid a pen toward me. "Initial here." I didn't move. Rusty growled, low, steady. Kara's smile strained. "Frank, refusing care can be dangerous. We only want your safety." "I carried men out of the jungle in 70, I said. "I'll handle my safety." Melissa pushed the pen into my palm. "Stop being dramatic. Sign it." Rusty barked once, sharp. The notary jolted, his stamp clattering against the folder. Water in the cup trembled. "No," I said, light, almost casual, then heavier than stone. "Not today." Melissa's eyes hardened. "We'll be back with witnesses. With a doctor. You'll sign." "You can come back," I said. "The answer stays the same." When they left, the house breathed again. I pulled the trash bag off the counter, untied it, and slipped out a photo. Maggie laughing, hair across her face. I wiped lemon polish from the plastic sleeve with my thumb. Rusty pressed his head against my leg. The clock ticked. Thursday was coming. The next day, Melissa insisted on running errands together. I knew better, but I went. Sometimes the fastest way to see a trap is to step right into it. We stopped at the Walgreens on J Street. The air inside was ice cold, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The place smelled of floor cleaner and plastic packaging. Customers shuffled in slow lines, clutching prescriptions and grocery bags. Melissa marched straight to the pharmacy counter. "We're here to pick up for Franklin Bennett," she told the clerk, sliding my insurance card across before I could speak. The clerk, a young man with tired eyes, typed quickly. Then he frowned. "Looks like the prescriptions were already picked up yesterday." My stomach dropped. Melissa smiled, casual. "Yes, I handled it. Just refill them under my name. It's easier this way." I stepped forward. "No, they're mine. You refill under my name." The clerk looked between us. Behind me, two women in line whispered. A man with a cane shifted uncomfortably, watching. "Sir," the clerk said carefully, "our system shows a trusted family member signed yesterday. If you suspect misuse, we can flag it." "I do," I said, voice louder than I meant. Heads turned. Rusty barked from the truck outside, muffled but sharp enough to carry. Melissa grabbed my arm. "Dad, stop making a scene." I pulled free. "I'll sign myself." The clerk hesitated, then slid a new form toward me. The pen was warm from his hand. I signed my name in thick black ink, steady and clear. The printer whirred, spitting out labels. Melissa's smile cracked. "You're overreacting. People are staring." "Let them," I said. I could feel the eyes on my back. Strangers, witnesses. For once, I wanted them to see. When the clerk handed me the bag, Melissa hissed, "This changes nothing. You'll sign Thursday." I tucked the prescriptions under my arm. "We'll see." As we walked out, the automatic doors sighed shut behind us. The air outside was hot, heavy with exhaust from the street. Rusty barked again, louder this time, and wagged his tail when he saw the bag in my hand. I scratched his head and looked back through the glass. Customers still watched from inside, murmuring. Not allies, not enemies, but they'd seen. That mattered. Melissa yanked the car door open and threw herself behind the wheel. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." I slid into the seat slowly, Rusty curling at my feet. "Good," I said. "Now you know how it feels." The engine started, her knuckles white on the wheel. Thursday loomed closer, but I wasn't the one on the clock anymore. The house was too quiet that night. The only sound was the steady tick of the kitchen clock and the low hum of the refrigerator. I sat at the table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at the steam that wasn't there anymore. The microwave blinked 12 o'clock like it had lost time along with me. Maggie used to fuss over that. She hated clocks that were wrong. I thought about resetting it, but I couldn't bring myself to get up. Rusty lay by the back door, sighing in his sleep. Even he seemed worn out by the weight pressing on the house. My phone lit up. I hoped it was an old buddy checking in, maybe one of the guys from the VFW. Instead, it was Melissa again. "Don't fight me on this. You'll just make things worse." I didn't answer. A few minutes later, I tried calling an old friend from the service, Gary, who'd helped me with paperwork before. It rang, then went to voicemail. I tried another, Tom, straight to voicemail. I left no messages. My voice didn't need to beg on recordings. I set the phone down, face down like it could silence the rejection. The kitchen light buzzed. Later, I walked to the pharmacy myself to make sure nothing else had been tampered with. The air smelled like antiseptic wipes and stale carpet cleaner. The pharmacist looked at me with polite confusion. "Mr. Bennett, didn't your daughter already take care of this?" The words hit me harder than if he'd shouted. "No," I said, sharper than I meant. "I'll take care of my own prescriptions." He gave a little shrug, handed me the bag, and turned to the next customer. I walked out clutching the small white sack like it was proof of my own existence. Outside, the parking lot lights buzzed overhead, throwing long shadows. A neighbor walked past and avoided my eyes, phone pressed to his ear, though I doubted anyone was on the line. At home, I found a brochure in the mailbox. Golden Oaks again, glossy paper, my name scribbled in Melissa's handwriting across the top. For Dad, urgent. I crumpled it in my fist, then smoothed it out again, sliding it into the drawer. Evidence, not trash. Rusty padded up beside me, his nails clicking on the linoleum, and rested his head against my thigh. His breath was warm, steady, the only heartbeat I trusted in that moment. Sleep wouldn't come. I sat in the living room, the lamp casting a weak yellow glow across Maggie's old photo frames. I traced the edges of her smile with my eyes, again and again, as if the glass could hold me up. The phone rang once more. Melissa? I let it buzz out. A text followed seconds later. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Thursday is final. Don't embarrass me. Embarrass her, not help me, not take care of Dad, just her reputation. I grabbed the little spiral notebook Maggie used to keep grocery lists in. With a thick black pen, I scrawled across the first page, "They want to erase me." The letters were crooked, too big, but they were mine. Proof of thought, proof of control. I turned the page and wrote again. If I ask, I lose. If I stand, I keep. The words steadied my hand more than the coffee ever could. Rusty stirred when a car slowed outside. Headlights swept across the blinds. For a moment, I thought it might be Melissa coming back with more papers, but the car moved on. The silence grew heavier. My phone buzzed again, this time from a neighbor, a short message. Melissa says you're moving to Golden Oaks. Congratulations. Congratulations, like it was a promotion. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I didn't answer. Instead, I wrote in the notebook one more line. Enough asking, time to prove. I closed the book, set it on the table beside Maggie's photo, and turned off the lamp. The room went dark except for the blinking microwave clock. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel tired. I felt awake, angry but awake. Rusty rested his head on my foot, and I whispered into the dark. We're not done yet, boy? The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with Maggie's photo propped up against the salt shaker. The house still smelled faintly of lemon polish, but underneath was something sourer, the scent of betrayal that clung to the walls. Rusty sat by my feet, waiting. I opened the drawer where I'd shoved the crumpled Golden Oaks brochure. On the back, in small ink, Melissa had scribbled a note. Call Cara directly. Dad doesn't need details. A phone number was circled twice. My jaw clenched. She wasn't even hiding her intent. I slipped the brochure into a folder I marked in thick black letters. Evidence. Later, at the bank, I asked to see my account activity. The teller, a young man in a too-tight shirt, glanced nervously at the screen. Mr. Bennett, it looks like there were attempts to link an external account last week. Did you authorize that? No, I said flatly. He frowned, clicking keys. Device ID doesn't match your phone. It's flagged. My hand tightened on the counter. Melissa. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. A man in line shifting impatiently. I could feel eyes on me, but I didn't move. Print it, I said. The printer spat out a thin sheet, the ink still warm. I folded it carefully and slid it into my folder. Evidence. When I got home, the mailbox was stuffed with more junk mail. Among it, an envelope addressed in neat handwriting. Inside, another Golden Oaks flyer, this one with a sticky note. Placement confirmed, Thursday. My name was scrawled at the bottom in Kara's hand. Rusty barked, startling me. A neighbor walked by, eyes flicking toward my porch, then away quickly. Everyone seemed to know what was happening. Everyone except me, until now. I went inside, shut the door, and spread the papers on the table. Brochure, bank log, flyer. A pathetic pile, maybe, but enough to show I wasn't imagining things. I pulled Maggie's old notebook closer and wrote in thick black strokes. First bricks. The house creaked in the late afternoon sun. Rusty lay his head on my foot, warm and steady. For the first time in weeks, I felt something spark in my chest that wasn't despair. Not hope, not yet, but direction. I didn't want to involve lawyers. Most of my life I handled things with my own two hands. But this fight wasn't fists or wrenches. Melissa was coming at me with paper, signatures, legal words I'd never used in a sentence. If I wanted to stop her, I had to answer in her language. So I drove to a little strip mall off Folsom Boulevard. Between a laundromat and a nail salon was a narrow office with frosted glass. Elder law and estate planning. Karen Doyle, attorney. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and cinnamon from the bakery next door. Inside, the office was quiet except for the creak of a leather chair and the buzz of an old desktop fan. Karen was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s with sharp eyes behind square glasses. She shook my hand firmly, no fake sympathy. What brings you in, Mr. Bennett? I placed the folder on her desk. Brochures, bank log, sticky notes. She flipped through them silently, lips pressed together. "Your daughter's setting up power of attorney and a placement agreement," she said finally. "Did you sign anything?" "No." "Good." She leaned back. "Once you do, it's hard to reverse, but there are steps we can take now." She pulled a thick form from her drawer, slid it across. "Affidavit of capacity. This confirms you're of sound mind. Signed by your physician, notarized. It blocks claims of incompetence." I nodded slowly. "And the bank?" She tapped the printout. "We'll file a revocation of any unauthorized access. I'll have Chase freeze third-party attempts. You'll also want to update your living trust if you haven't." Her voice was calm, but every word felt like building a barricade. Rusty, lying at my feet, shifted when the door creaked. The receptionist poked her head in. "Miss Doyle, Golden Oaks just left a message. Something about Mr. Bennett's intake." Karen's eyes flicked to me. "See? They're moving fast." My chest tightened. "So we move faster." She smiled, just barely. "Exactly." By the time I left, the folder was heavier. Affidavits to fill, revocations to sign, trust documents to review. I slid them into the passenger seat. Rusty rested his head on them as if he knew what they meant. Driving home, the sun hung low, red through the haze. My phone buzzed. Melissa again. "Dad, don't forget Thursday. I'll pick you up at 2. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled into a FedEx shop. The air smelled of ink and cardboard. I copied every page Karen had given me, slipping duplicates into a new envelope. I mailed one straight back to her office, certified. The clerk stamped the receipt, proof. Rusty barked once from the truck, sharp and sure. For the first time, it sounded like agreement. The next day I started early. The house was still cool, windows fogged with morning air. I set Maggie's old camcorder on the counter, battery charged overnight. It wasn't fancy, but the red light worked. Melissa had gotten too comfortable making calls on speaker, talking like I wasn't in the room. So I left the camcorder on the shelf above the fridge, angled just right. Rusty tilted his head at the blinking light, then lay down as if guarding it. At noon, Melissa barged in without knocking, arms full of folders. She dropped them on the table with a slap. "Dad, Golden Oaks needs your medical records. Sign this release." I sat back, folding my arms. "What's the rush?" She sighed, louder than necessary. "You forget things, Dad? This way they'll have everything ready, no stress." Her phone buzzed. She swiped and hit speaker, setting it down carelessly. Kara's voice filled the kitchen. "Thursday is confirmed. We'll need his consent signatures. Don't let him stall." Melissa's eyes flicked to me, daring me to react. I kept still, heart pounding. The camcorder blinked. "I'll handle it," she said into the phone. "He won't fight much longer." My hands gripped the chair. Evidence, finally. But when the call ended, Melissa's gaze lingered on the counter. Her eyes narrowed. "What's that red light?" Rusty barked once sharp. I stood quickly, blocking her view with my shoulder. "Microwave timer," I said. She frowned, stepping closer. "It's not the microwave." I forced a chuckle. "Old wiring. Everything blinks in this house." For a moment, I thought she'd push past me. Her perfume was sharp, too sweet, filling the air. Then she shook her head, muttering, "This place is falling apart anyway," and grabbed her folders. When the door slammed behind her, I exhaled. My shirt was damp with sweat. Rusty patted over and licked my hand, his tongue rough against my skin. I pulled the camcorder down, thumb shaking as I hit stop. The recording light faded. Inside that little cassette was her voice, her admission. My pulse slowed, but the weight in my chest didn't. Almost caught, almost ruined, but still standing. I slid the cassette into a fireproof box under Maggie's chair, the one Melissa had tried to move. Evidence in the one place she hated. Rusty curled up beside the box like he understood. Thursday was coming closer, but for the first time, I had more than anger. I had proof. The following morning, I drove back to the FedEx office off Howe Avenue. The parking lot shimmered in the heat. Asphalt soft under the tires. Rusty whined in the passenger seat, tail brushing the folder on his side like he knew what it meant. Inside, the store smelled of toner and cardboard. I copied the cassette tape from the camcorder to a USB drive the clerk handed me in a plain plastic case. She didn't ask questions, just slid the receipt across the counter. The stamp on the paper felt heavier than gold. Back at home, I pulled out Maggie's old fireproof box. Inside now were 3 things: the bank printout, the Golden Oaks flyers, and the cassette. I slipped the USB inside too, then locked the box shut. Evidence had weight now. Melissa showed up that afternoon, striding in like a realtor showing off property. She glanced at the shelf where Maggie's photos used to be. Half were gone, hidden by me in a storage unit across town. Her brow furrowed. "Where are the albums?" she asked. "Safe," I said simply. She tilted her head. "Dad, don't be stubborn. Golden Oaks does memory workshops. You don't need to cling to this old junk." Rusty growled, low, steady. Melissa sighed and opened her folder again, pulling out another form. "Sign this consent. It lets me coordinate with the bank." I shook my head. "Already spoke to them." "They flagged your attempt." Her eyes snapped to mine, wide for half a second before she masked it. "You must be confused." I didn't answer, just let the silence hang. She stuffed the paper back into her folder, muttering, "You're making this hard for yourself." When she finally left, slamming the door, I sat down in the quiet. Rusty pressed against my leg, warm and steady. I pulled Maggie's notebook closer and wrote in bold strokes, "Evidence equals wall." That night I drove out to the storage unit again, a dim corridor smelling of dust and motor oil. I slid a duplicate envelope into a metal lockbox there, USB, printouts, flyers, another brick in the wall. As I closed the unit, the heavy door groaning shut, I felt something I hadn't in months. Control. Melissa came earlier than usual the next day, not bothering to text first. The slam of the front door echoed through the house, and Rusty barked from the hallway, hackles raised. She stood there in the living room with her arms crossed, folder clutched like a weapon. "Dad, why did I get a call from Chase's fraud department? They asked me if I was authorized on your account." I leaned back in Maggie's armchair. "Because you aren't." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're clever? You flagged me? Do you know how that looks? Banks don't just drop inquiries. It puts me on record." "That's your problem," I said, voice steady. She stepped closer, perfume sharp, filling the air. "You're playing with fire. You'll end up with your account frozen. Then what? Who pays your bills? Your meds? Who takes care of you?" Rusty growled again, deep in his chest. I didn't answer. I let the silence drag, the clock ticking in the kitchen loud enough to measure every second of her stare. She finally snapped. "Fine. If you want to do this the hard way, I'll make some calls. Don't blame me when APS shows up at your door." "A PS?" I asked. "Adult Protective Services," she said, smiling thin. "They take reports seriously. If I say you're unsafe here, you'll have a social worker crawling through this house tomorrow." The threat hung in the air. Rusty barked sharp. Melissa winced, then turned for the door. "Thursday, Dad. Don't forget. You'll sign, one way or another." The door slammed behind her. The walls felt smaller. That night, just after dark, headlights slowed outside. A car idled at the curb for a long minute, engine low and steady. I stood at the blinds, watching the glow. Rusty pressed against my leg, ears flat. Then the car pulled away. I sat back down at the table, heart still pounding. She was tightening the noose. But all her threats were just more paper, more noise. And I was learning how to turn every page against her. It happened 2 days later. A knock at the door, not sharp like Melissa's, but steady, official. Rusty barked from the hallway, his nails clicking against the hardwood as he charged to the entry. When I opened the door, a man in a county windbreaker stood there, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Bennett, I'm with Adult Protective Services. We received a report about your living situation." Behind him, a neighbor pretended to sweep his driveway, eyes darting our way. "Melissa's doing." She wanted this to be seen. Rusty growled low, and I laid a hand on his collar. "What's the complaint?" The man cleared his throat, flipping papers. "Allegations of self-neglect, unsafe home environment, possible financial confusion." I barked out a laugh. "Financial confusion? I balanced a company's books for 20 years. He looked uncomfortable. "I just need to do a brief walkthrough." I stepped aside, letting him in. The house smelled of coffee and Rusty's old blanket. The kitchen was clean, photos lined the shelf, papers stacked neatly on the table. I'd made sure of it that morning. The man scribbled notes. "Do you live alone?" "Yes, with my dog." "Any falls?" Trouble remembering. I met his eyes. "I remember exactly who sent you." He shifted uneasy. "We follow up on all reports." Rusty pressed close to me, growling when the man stepped near Maggie's photo. "I see no immediate concerns," he said quickly. "I'll close the file as unfounded." When he left, the neighbor was still watching. I stared until he looked away, broom hanging useless at his side. Later that afternoon, I gathered my folder to add the APS report, but the paper I'd printed from the bank was gone. Panic hit like a fist. I tore through the folder, checking every sleeve. Nothing. Rusty whined, sensing the shift. I sat down hard, sweat prickling my neck. Melissa. She must have slipped it out the last time she was here. My breath came fast, too fast. Without that page, my case looked thin. For a moment, despair clawed at me, threatening to pull me back into the dark. Then I remembered the duplicates at the storage unit, the envelope I'd mailed to Karen. The wall was still there, even if one brick was missing. I leaned back, exhaling slow. "Not today," I muttered. "You won't break me today." Rusty licked my hand, steadying me. The sun dipped low, painting the blinds with orange light. I opened Maggie's notebook and scrawled, "They strike harder, so will I." The next morning, I drove out to the storage unit again. The air inside the long corridor was heavy with dust and motor oil, fluorescent lights buzzing above. My key scraped in the lock before the metal door rattled up. Inside, the metal lockbox waited where I'd left it. I knelt, opened it, and felt the rush of relief when the duplicate bank log, the USB, and the flyers lay untouched. Solid. My wall still stood. Rusty padded inside behind me, sniffing at the concrete floor, tail wagging faintly. He circled once and lay down beside the box like a guard. I pulled out the duplicates, checked them again, and slid them into a second envelope. On the front, I scrawled in black marker, "Copy, if lost, open." Then I drove straight to Karen's office and handed it to her receptionist. "Back up," I said simply. Karen herself appeared in the doorway, hair pulled into a bun, glasses slipping down her nose. She gave me a small smile. "You're building a wall, mister." Bennett smart. "Melissa can't knock it all down." Rusty barked once, as if agreeing. That night, back home, Melissa showed up again. She was sharper now, less polite. "Dad, APS will be back. You embarrassed me in front of them." I sat in Maggie's chair, notebook open on my lap. "They left because there's nothing to see." She paced the living room, heels punching the wood floor. "You think you're winning? Thursday you'll be sitting in Golden Oaks, whether you like it or not. Paperwork already says so." She stopped, eyes darting to the fireproof box under the chair. For a heartbeat, her gaze lingered there. Rusty stood, barking, tail stiff. Melissa flinched, then forced a smile. "Keep clinging to your junk. It won't save you." When the door slammed behind her, I exhaled. My hand shook as I wrote in the notebook, "She sees the box. Move it." So I did. After dark, I carried the box to the truck, Rusty riding shotgun, ears pricked. I drove across town to the VFW hall, where an old friend worked nights. I left the box in his care, inside a locked filing cabinet. Walking back to the truck, the night air cool on my face, I felt lighter. Melissa could tear the house apart now. She'd find nothing. Rusty barked softly, almost like a laugh. I scratched behind his ears. "We're still in this, boy." For the first time, I believed it. The church hall on 28th Street glowed with strings of white lights, the air thick with perfume, hairspray, and the faint tang of catered food. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows, the kind that groan under too much weight. At the front, Melissa stood in her silk dress, smile wide, hand resting on her fiancé's arm. I stood in the doorway with Rusty at my side, my old suit hanging loose on my frame. Conversations faltered, laughter thinned, heads turned, the hush spread like a wave. "Dad?" Melissa's smile froze, then tightened. "What are you doing here?" I stepped onto the carpet, the sound of my cane tapping carrying farther than it should have. "Came to wish you well." My voice was steady, louder than I felt. A murmur rippled through the room. One of Melissa's friends whispered, "Isn't he supposed to be at Golden Oaks?" Her fiancé's mother shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse tighter. Melissa recovered quickly, flashing a brittle smile. "Guests, excuse the interruption. My father isn't well. He tends to wander." I stopped halfway down the aisle. "Not well?" I just walked in here on my own two legs. I remember my name, my history, and... I held up the folder under my arm. Every paper you tried to bury me with. The room stirred. A cousin leaned forward, whispering, "What's he talking about?" Cameras from a couple of guests' phones came up, little red dots glowing. Melissa's smile twitched. "Dad, this isn't the place." "Oh, it's exactly the place," I said. "All these witnesses. Isn't that what you wanted? People to see how helpless I am?" Rusty barked once, sharp, echoing off the walls. A few guests laughed nervously, shifting in their seats. I laid Maggie's photo on the front pew, propped where everyone could see. Her smile caught the light, frozen in joy. "This woman built this family," I said. "And you threw her into the trash." Gasps rose. A few heads turned to Melissa, eyes widening. She stammered, "He's confused, he doesn't—" I opened the folder slowly, the rustle of paper louder than the music had been minutes earlier. "Confused?" I said. "Then how did I manage to collect this?" The murmurs grew louder. The pastor shifted uneasily at the altar, watching like he wasn't sure whether to intervene. Melissa's fiancé tugged at his collar. "What's happening?" Melissa's jaw clenched. "Nothing. He's senile." I smiled thin, sharp. "We'll let the papers decide that." And I laid the first document on the pew for all to see. I lifted the first paper high enough for the front rows to see. The affidavit of capacity. The notary's seal shone under the hall lights, heavy and undeniable. "This," I said, voice steady, "is signed by Dr. Patel at UC Davis 2 weeks ago. He confirmed I am of sound mind and fully capable of making my own decisions. This paper says I am not incompetent, not senile, not confused." Gasps spread through the pews. A woman in the second row whispered, "So he's not crazy." Another murmured, "Then why Golden Oaks?" Melissa's smile strained, cracking under the weight of too many eyes. She snapped her fingers toward me like I was a child. "Dad, stop this. You don't understand those documents. They tricked you." I stepped closer, cane tapping against the aisle. "Tricked me? You mean like how you tried to trick APS into declaring me unsafe? They came, they saw, they walked out. No concerns?" Rusty barked again, echoing in the hushed room. Melissa's fiancé shifted uncomfortably, leaning toward her. "You didn't tell me about APS?" She hissed through her teeth. "Because it's nothing. He's confused." I laid the affidavit on the pew, its seal catching the light. Confused men don't drive themselves to doctors, don't notarize their own affidavits, don't keep copies in 3 different places. Confused men don't build cases. Someone near the back chuckled, low but audible. A phone camera zoomed closer. Melissa's voice rose, sharper, brittle. "He's lying!" "He probably forged it. He's desperate." Karen Doyle's voice cut in from the side aisle. She'd slipped in quietly, but now she stood tall, briefcase in hand. "The affidavit is valid. I filed a copy myself with the county clerk's office." All eyes swung to her. Melissa's face drained of color. "Who is that?" her fiancé demanded. "My attorney," I said simply. The hall erupted in murmurs, people whispering to each other, guests turning their phones to film both of us now. Melissa's hands trembled at her sides. She shook her head, her voice breaking. "This is my wedding, Dad." "You're humiliating me." I leaned heavier on my cane, each word cutting clean. "No, Melissa. You humiliated yourself. I'm just letting people see the papers." Rusty barked once more, sharp, as if punctuating the line. The church hall was buzzing now, a hive disturbed. Guests whispered in clusters, phones up like glowing eyes, some recording, some pretending not to. The air smelled of cheap roses from the centerpieces and the tang of nervous sweat. Melissa's fiancé tried to tug her toward the altar, but she planted her heels, glaring at me. "Enough. You've embarrassed yourself long enough." I laid another sheet from my folder across the front pew, letting the paper flap just enough for the first rows to catch a glimpse. The printer ink still sharp, black lines cutting across the page. "This," I said, holding it high, "is from Chase Bank, printed by the branch manager on Howe Avenue. It shows someone tried to link my account to an external one. The attempt was flagged. Device ID didn't match mine. Do you know whose device it was?" Heads turned. Someone whispered, "That's fraud, isn't it?" Another, louder, "Elder exploitation." I saw a piece about that on Channel 7. Melissa's face flushed scarlet. "He doesn't understand. Banks make mistakes all the time." I stepped forward, cane tapping the tile. "Banks don't make mistakes about device IDs. It wasn't my phone, wasn't my computer, and when I asked them, they said the name Melissa Bennett appeared in the inquiry log." The crowd rippled with gasps. Her fiancé's head snapped toward her. "Melissa?" she stammered, hands fluttering like trapped birds. It's not what it looks like. I was just checking on him, making sure things were secure." I slammed the paper onto the pew. The sound cracked through the air like a gavel, Rusty barked, nails clicking on the tile as he stood, ears forward. "Checking," I said, voice rising. "You call stealing my account checking? You call forging my consent care?" The pastor, still rooted by the altar, tried to speak but faltered, caught between the ceremony and the storm unraveling before him. Melissa turned to the guests, eyes wide, pleading now. "He's twisting everything. You all know he's been forgetting things. He's paranoid, confused." "Confused?" I cut in, stepping closer. The hall lights glinted off the notary stamp on the affidavit still propped on the pew. I remembered enough to file an affidavit. Enough to print these records, enough to hire an attorney who filed with the county clerk. "You call that confusion?" Karen Doyle stepped forward again, her voice firm and carrying. "For the record, I received the same log directly from Chase's fraud division. It's authentic, and it names Melissa Bennett as the attempted third-party link." The room erupted. Murmurs, gasps, a few outright shouts. The fiancé's mother clutched her pearls, muttering, "God help us." Melissa's hands trembled. She turned on Karen, voice shrill. "You're lying! He's paying you to make me look bad." Karen's lips tightened. "I don't take clients who forge evidence. Everything here is verified. You'd know that if you ever read a statute." Laughter broke out in the back rows, nervous, sharp, cutting Melissa down. Her fiancé's face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. "Melissa, did you really try to take his money?" She whirled on him, desperation in her eyes. "I was protecting us, protecting our future. Do you want him wasting everything on hospital bills and old memories? He doesn't need it anymore. We do." The words hit the hall like a dropped plate. Silence, heavy and cold. Then the whispers rose again, faster, sharper, everyone speaking at once. I raised my cane, and the noise fell away. "Did you hear her?" Not protecting me, protecting herself, protecting her image, her wedding, her pocket, and all by burying her father alive in paperwork. Rusty barked once more, his tail stiff like a soldier at attention. Melissa's voice cracked raw now. "Stop twisting this. You don't understand how hard it is to deal with you, your moods, your stubbornness." "No," I said, leaning heavy on the cane. "You don't understand what it is to lose your wife and be left with nothing but photographs. To be told by your own child that those photographs are garbage." The guests shifted, eyes dropping, some ashamed for her, some for me. But they all stayed silent, watching, recording, witnessing. Melissa's fiancé backed away half a step, pulling his arm free of hers. His face was stone. "You should have told me," he whispered. Melissa reached for him, panic flaring in her voice. "I was doing it for us!" But he turned his back. I straightened as much as my old spine allowed, voice carrying through the hall. "This is the truth. Signed, stamped, and sealed. Not my paranoia, not my confusion, just her greed on paper." The phones kept recording, the red dots steady, the silence thick as concrete. And I wasn't done yet. The hall was a storm now, whispers like thunder rolling between the pews. Guests shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, others pulling out their phones higher. The air smelled of sweat and perfume, with the faint sugary edge of untouched wedding cake drifting from the back. Melissa was cornered but still clawing. "He's twisting everything," she said, her voice shrill, desperate. "He has no proof of anything real, just papers he doesn't even understand." I reached into my folder again, slow and deliberate. The room fell quieter with each movement, as if everyone sensed the blow coming. Rusty stood at my side, ears pricked, tail stiff. "This isn't just paper," I said. I held up a small cassette tape, its black shell dull under the lights. "This is your voice, Melissa. You on speakerphone, telling Kara from Golden Oaks that I wouldn't fight much longer. That you'd make me sign." Gasps broke out, sharper this time, like the whole room had inhaled at once. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Melissa froze, eyes wide, then darted toward me. "That's illegal. He can't record me without—" Karen Doyle's voice cut her off, calm but cold. "In California, one-party consent with evidence of elder exploitation is admissible. I've already filed a copy under protective order." A ripple moved through the crowd. Shock, approval, murmurs of, "He's covered every angle." Melissa shook her head violently, her hair coming loose. "No, it's out of context. You don't know what I meant." I stepped closer, cane tapping like a drumbeat. "Shall we play it, Melissa? Let them all hear exactly what you meant?" I held the tape player Karen had handed me earlier. With one click, Melissa's voice filled the church hall. Clear, sharp, undeniable. Don't let him stall. He won't fight much longer. He'll sign, one way or another. The words echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Guests gasped. Some covered their mouths. A woman in the second row shook her head, whispering, she planned to break him. Melissa's fiancé staggered back, his face pale. You said your dad agreed. You told me he wanted this. Melissa reached for him, her hands trembling. It was for us, for the future. He pulled away, his voice raw. That's not a future. That's theft. Rusty barked sharply, and for a moment it sounded like laughter. Melissa's voice cracked, desperation spilling out. You don't understand. He's impossible. He clings to junk, to old photos, to a life that's gone. I'm just trying to move us forward. I pulled Maggie's photo from the folder, the same one I had rescued from the trash. I held it high so every eye in the hall could see her laughing face. This is the junk you threw away. This is the woman who built this family, and you wanted her erased as much as me. A wave of murmurs rolled over the crowd, some guests openly glaring at Melissa now. Someone whispered, "Heartless," loud enough for others to nod. Melissa's eyes darted to the doors, calculating escape. Her hands shook, knuckles white. Stop this! All of you! He's just bitter! Karen's voice cut in again, firmer. No, Melissa. He's your father, and he's telling the truth. Reporters who had slipped in from the back, Channel 7, cameras on their shoulders, stepped forward, their red lights blinking. A microphone extended toward Melissa. Melissa Bennett, a reporter said, do you want to comment on these allegations of financial exploitation against your father? Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. She looked from the cameras to her fiancé, to the guests, then back at me. Her face crumpled for the first time. I placed Maggie's photo back on the pew, propping it against the affidavit and the bank log. One by one, the pieces lined up, truth laid bare for all to see. Not bitter, I said, voice low but carrying. Prepared. You thought papers could bury me, but now papers bury you. The hall was silent, waiting for her to answer, to deny again, to fight back. But Melissa just stood there, chest heaving, eyes glassy, as the cameras rolled and the witnesses leaned forward, hungry for her downfall. And I wasn't finished yet. The church hall was boiling now, not from heat, but from pressure. The lights above hummed, cameras whirred, and the smell of sweat, perfume, and wilting roses thickened the air. Melissa stood frozen near the altar, silk dress trembling as if the fabric itself wanted to run. I wasn't done. I reached into my folder one last time, slow, deliberate. The room hushed. Every eye followed my hand, as if the outcome of the wedding, of the family, of everything, hung on the last piece of paper. This, I said, unfolding it with care, is the original deed to the house. My house. The one you told people was already yours. Gasps. Someone muttered, she tried to steal his home? I tapped the signature line at the bottom. My name, bold and steady, dated clear. Still in my possession, still mine. And here, I pulled another sheet from behind it. The revocation of all power of attorney claims. Signed, notarized, filed with the county clerk last Friday. The notary's seal gleamed, undeniable. Melissa's knees bent like she might collapse. That's impossible. You couldn't have... Karen Doyle stepped forward, lifting her briefcase. I filed both myself, and I submitted them to probate court this morning. Any attempt to override these documents is fraud. Elder exploitation carries prison time, Melissa. The gasp this time was sharp, collective. Some guests leaned back, eyes wide. Others leaned forward, hungry for the wreck. Melissa's fiancé's voice cracked as he spoke, barely above a whisper. You lied to me. About everything. She reached for him, her hands clawing air. No, I was doing it for us, for the wedding, for the future. He pulled his arm back like her touch burned. You wanted to bury your father alive in paperwork. That's not a future, that's a grave. The words landed like a hammer. Melissa's breath hitched, shallow, ragged. Channel 7's reporter pressed forward, microphone raised. Melissa Bennett, do you deny the evidence presented? The bank logs, the affidavit, the recording, the deed revocation? Melissa opened her mouth, but only a strangled sob came out. She shook her head violently, hair falling loose, makeup smudging. This isn't fair, she wailed. He was supposed to He was supposed to just sign. The crowd erupted, murmurs like waves crashing. A woman in the second row spat, "Heartless!" Someone else shouted, "Shame on you!" Rusty barked, sharp, echoing like a gavel strike. I stepped closer, leaning heavy on my cane, each tap of its rubber tip punctuating the silence between the murmurs. I looked at Melissa, really looked, and felt no triumph. Only the cold relief of truth revealed. "You said I was already gone," I told her. My voice was calm, low, but carried to every corner of the hall. "You buried me in forms, in signatures, in lies. But you forgot one thing." Melissa's tear-streaked face lifted, eyes wide, desperate. "What?" she choked. I raised the deed, the affidavit, the bank log, and Maggie's photo, layering them together in my hands like a shield. "I'm still here." "And papers don't lie." Gasps again, then silence, heavy and final. Melissa's fiancé dropped her hand, stepped back, and turned his face away. The pastor lowered his gaze, lips tight. The Channel 7 camera zoomed closer, the red light blinking like a final judgment. Melissa crumpled then, knees hitting the floor, sobs breaking loose, words spilling. It was supposed to be mine. All of it. Mine. Her own confession. The crowd erupted, some gasping, some shouting, some filming every second. Rusty barked again, then sat by my leg, steady as stone. I set the papers back on the pew, Maggie's photo on top, her smiling face watching it all. And then I delivered the line that would outlive the wedding, outlive the shame, outlive even me. "You buried me with papers, Melissa. Today, papers buried you." And I stood, cane steady, Maggie's photo shining in the lights, while my family's truth finally breathed free. The wedding never finished. Guests spilled out of the church hall in small groups, their voices hushed, their eyes darting to me and away again. Channel 7's van idled outside, its antenna stretching into the gray Sacramento sky. The smell of exhaust mixed with roses from the bouquets abandoned near the doors. I stood on the steps, folder under my arm, Rusty at my heel. My knees ached, but I held myself straighter than I had in years. People needed to see that. A neighbor from down the street approached, the same one who used to avoid my eyes when Melissa spread her stories. He cleared his throat, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Frank, I didn't know. I'm sorry." I nodded once. "Now you do." Karen came out a few minutes later, her briefcase heavier than when she arrived. "Everything's secure," she told me. "The filings stand. Chase froze your account to outside access. The court will issue a restraining order by Monday." Her voice was calm, businesslike, but her eyes softened. "You did well today." I looked down at Rusty, who was panting, tail thumping against the step. "We did," I said. Reporters still lingered, microphones flashing like bayonets. One shouted, "Mr. Bennett, do you have a comment for the public?" I shook my head. "The papers already spoke." "That's enough." Back home, the house was quiet again. I set Maggie's photo back on the shelf, brushing dust from the glass. The smell of lemon polish was gone, replaced by the faint scent of Rusty's fur and the coffee I left brewing too long. It was my house again. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a simple dinner: toast, canned soup, a glass of water. Rusty lay at my feet, snoring softly. For the first time in months, food didn't taste like ash. I wrote in Maggie's notebook one last line for the day. Truth stood, I stood, and I closed it without shaking. The following week, Channel 7 ran the story every night. They called it Sacramento Veteran Exposes Elder Exploitation at Daughter's Wedding. Neighbors who once turned away now waved when I walked Rusty down the block. The air smelled sweeter, the lawns greener, though maybe it was just me breathing easier. Melissa moved out of town with her fiancé, or ex-fiancé, judging by the papers. I didn't follow the details. What mattered was that she no longer held the keys to my life. At the county clerk's office, I signed the last document Karen had prepared. A living trust with my own hand, my own terms. The pen felt heavy, steady. When the clerk stamped it, the sound was like a door closing softly but firmly. Back home, I took the fireproof box from the VFW and carried it to the riverbank where Maggie and I used to walk. Rusty padded beside me, sniffing the cool evening air. Inside the box lay the duplicates, the logs, the tape, all the weight of months of fear. I took Maggie's photo out, the one I had pulled from the trash, and slipped it into my shirt pocket. The rest I left behind, locking the box one last time and sinking it deep into the storage locker at the hall. Evidence had done its job. It no longer needed to live in my house. On the porch that night, with the crickets singing and Rusty stretched across my feet, I looked at Maggie's photo and whispered, "It's safe now." The clock ticked in the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed. Ordinary sounds, beautiful in their ordinariness. I leaned back and let the air fill me. And I understood. Family is a road with two lanes. When my daughter pushed me off the road, I had every right to walk away, and to take back what was mine.